What's up everybody, welcome back, and today we're going to discuss a wish list for 2025 for things that we hope or could come to Squad. So first, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below. What is something that you would really love to see added to the game? And let's get to it. So we're going to go over a couple things we know is already on the way. First and foremost, we have the announcement that Unreal 5 is coming to Squad for 2025, or at least that's what OWI is working towards. Now, tied to this is largely optimization. This is something that OWI has been working towards getting to and improving the performance of the game itself. But attached to Unreal 5 and this optimization transition, we also have a few things that OWI has mentioned that may also make their way to the game. And a couple things weren't on my bingo list. For example, night and day sort of time cycles, or at least the progression of a time during a round, along with some form of weather added to the game. Now, attached to Unreal 5 also comes the Al-Bazar rework, a map that has long been in Squad that needed some updating, and it appears to be getting that and will be released alongside or somewhere after Unreal 5 is introduced. The expectation is that Al-Bazar is about done, if not complete, by now, and the team is already starting to work on reworking some of the Eastern European biome assets, maybe giving us some expectation that we could see some new Eastern European maps or updated maps. We also know that manpads and cast helicopters are something that Squad is working on testing in Unreal 5 and plan to introduce more of that later, likely alongside Unreal 5. Finally, one of the other notable pieces to this transition would be seeing the update to vehicle physics, something that has been teased and talked about in some of the more recent posts, and it's something that a lot of vehicle players are really excited about, including myself. Now, that's what we know is on the way, and we're going to tie this in somewhat with our wish list, so I thought it was important to mention some of those things. But let's start talking about what we hope or what we might expect to see from Squad in the future. The first thing is obvious, and it's directly tied to Unreal 5, and that's optimization. We know that OWI is looking at Unreal 5 to help with this because of the tools offered within the engine to help accommodate better performance. This is the number one thing that I hear pretty consistently across the board about the game from all of you in my comments and responding to videos is that we need performance updates. I think OWI is well aware of this. This is something that they're working on. And granted, this is tied to Unreal 5. And I think the benefit of Unreal 5 is it gives them more tools to try to work around how to improve performance. But I think it'll be a little bit longer before we see how Unreal 5 actually affects it across the board. This is going to remain on the wish list until we see it sort of enacted, until we see performance actually improve. That included with bug fixes. I'll go ahead and attach that to optimization because hopefully with Unreal 5, we can see some bugs that continue to exist within Squad as it stands, removed or fixed moving into Unreal 5. But to enjoy a lot of things we might want on our wish list, this is something that we just need to have happen. Now, one of the next big things that I had hoped we would see would be a vehicle overhaul. Now, is this tied to the Unreal 5 physics update? To some extent, yes. Having your vehicles get stuck on rocks or not being able to jump over walls and being sort of limited in terms of where they can progress because of just simple things that stand in their way is incredibly frustrating. We've all encountered a situation like that. It sort of ruins the immersive aspect of Squad if you're having to get out and flip the vehicle or just rotate it to get off of a rock you've high centered on. Now, in addition to this, I've also heard some calls for updates to some of the damage models or how damage might work on certain vehicles. For example, should MBTs have more components that could be damaged specifically versus just having hull damage applied? This be an area where we see some updates, maybe even some elements of like consistency across certain vehicle types. I don't know. But I do know that with vehicle handling getting an update, there's an opportunity there to maybe work on some other things having to do with damage models. Beyond that, maybe we see some updates to optics. I know there were some conversations about how to use recon vehicles in the game, and that may be something that OWI looks at later, giving some capability to some of those vehicles that extends beyond what we currently have. Next, I'm going to talk about factions, and it's kind of tied with maps because I think they're sort of correlated in a way, and I'll explain here in a second. We have the Western PMCs in the game now, and they can play anywhere. And some of you have mentioned interest in seeing something like a European PMC group or maybe an Eastern European PMC group, something to the likes of the Wagner group that could be available in areas like Europe, maybe the Middle East, maybe even Africa. I think the largest difference between this and the WPMCs would be some weaponry and some of the vehicles that they have. It may tie in a lot with what the Russian ground forces use, but I could see some opportunities here to make something fun and exciting. It would be sort of interesting and a counter to what the WPMCs bring to the game. Now, is it possible that with the insurgents getting renamed to the Middle Eastern insurgents that we could see another insurgent-like faction implemented into the game? And one thing I've heard talked about before would be some sort of rebel group or something based out of Africa. which also ties into another video I made earlier this year where I discussed possible factions coming to Squad. I mentioned that the French might be an interesting choice considering there's already a mod made for the French faction. Now, I haven't played the mod, but I do note that on their About Us page, there is mention of a map that is based in Mali, which is in Western Africa. So maybe this could tie in well with some sort of rebel group based in Africa. But probably one of the most consistently requested factions to be added to Squad would be Germany. Now, much like the French mod, there is a Germany mod that is a work in progress, it seems, also made by the Tactical Collective. This would be another faction I'd love to see implemented into the game at some point. Finally, there's a couple honorable mentions I'd like to make here. I would love to see a Japanese Defense Force, again, building out that Asia-Pacific region in terms of what's available in the game. I also know some folks have mentioned the possibility of one day having something from South America. I know there's a Brazil mod. I haven't really dove into that just yet, but I'd like to at least mention it here because that would be another biome entirely different from what we have that could be really interesting to see implemented. And does this give the opportunity for sort of insurgent or rebel forces, maybe cartel forces that are based in that region of the world? Now that we've talked about factions, we can talk a little bit more about maps. So I thought that we would see another map from the Asia Pacific region, again, tied to the Japanese Defense Force maybe. I know that the Japanese Defense Force mod actually has an Okinawa map that is built or in progress. So I thought that would be cool to see added. And like I mentioned while talking about factions, I would also like to see maybe an Africa-based map. I think that would be kind of an interesting thing to explore. I'd of course love to see another North American map, something along the lines of Manikugan or Goose Bay added into the mix. But besides just adding maps, I think there's an opportunity to refresh a few. For example, Mestia could use a little bit of a refresh, especially where some of the terrain gets hard to traverse. Part of me feels like Logar and Samari could see an update in terms of the map size to make it more playable for combined arms, and then it would see a little bit more attention in games. I think Anvil, Lashkar Valley, and Scorpio are all going to see the benefits of the vehicle updates coming with Unreal 5. Maybe they need some polish to fully take advantage of that, but I do think Scorpio needs a texture refresh, especially for the grass. And finally, I think Talil Outskirts could use something like a refresh that we're getting for Al Basra. You can maintain some of the large deserts, but a little bit more density and things for infantry to play with would make that map, I think, really excel. And I've been consistently a fan of European or Eastern European based maps with a mix of urban areas or just open farmland. In fact, I've seen some images teased from a map that the modders are working on for the Germany faction mod, which actually looks super impressive and something that I'm pretty sure I would absolutely love to play. So that's an overview on maps. Now let's talk about a few odds and ends that I'd like to see implemented into the game. And this is going to be a little bit of a random, speedy list of stuff that could be added or worked on. So back to some degree to factions, I'd love to see an update of the British Armed Forces. I've talked about this a little bit off and on. I think they just need a refresh. They need an update to make them something on the same level as some of the other newer factions out of the game. A little bit more variety, some options with scopes or different weaponry. That'd be a start. Honestly, I think a lot of factions could see just some small cosmetic tweaks that would kind of give them a little bit of life without altering them drastically. But that's not the case for this. I think the British Armed Forces just need a refresh. When the WPMC were added, we saw a bunch of weaponry, especially under the Rifleman kit, something that they've also added to the Middle Eastern insurgents. I hope when allowing, or when it makes sense at least, that we continue to see a variety of options come to different factions, whether it be optics or attachments that make us have some flexibility in terms of how we play and what we play with. So I think something OWI has actually touched on to some degree would be an update of game modes. Obviously, when you're playing Squad, you're typically going to see Random Advanced and Secure, and Invasion. While you may not see Skirmish because that's typically meant for smaller layers, it'd be great to see Destruction, Insurgency, and Territory Control sort of come back and be more available, especially to newer players. Having that variety would be nice, and then it would add replayability to the game as a whole. I'm not exactly sure how to update these 3 game modes, but it'd be cool to have them back in that rotation and be something that people wanted to vote on, and were actively a part of the server rotation, again, for that variety. There's one more thing I'd love to see added to the game specifically for me. This is primarily going to affect content creators or folks that enjoy being an admin cam, would be something like helmet cam and additional admin camera functionality, but that's not for the larger audience necessarily. But I think it would be cool. So I'd love to hear what might be on your wish list for Squad. I'm sure a lot of the things that I've included here are pretty consistent across the community. But if there's a vehicle or some type of weaponry, maybe a faction or a map that you know about that you think should get added, let me know down in the comments below. Of course, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and I'll catch you guys next time.